Okay, you can see that I'm moving my way forward in the color story of my painting. The gray that I used to make my cat came from this color combination. So it is this kind of oxidey red that I mixed in with the blue and the purple that was from the background to make this kind of dark. It ends up being sort of a bluish gray. So you can see I'm sticking true to the idea that I'm going to move from the back to the front. I have a color mixed up that I think will work for this edge here. So as I'm moving forward in my window like this, oh, that's way too much of the red in there somewhere. Oh, I'm pulling red out of my palette. Oh, it's not a color that's going to work. So you can see sometimes painting is a bit of trial and error. Actually, I was pulling up more wet red on my palette. Hazard of not keeping my palette particularly clean. Not a terrible color though. And I can probably make this work. It brings some of those warm tones forward. So like I said before, even though that this is in my room out here, this is technically white. It doesn't look particularly white in the photograph. It's fairly shadowed. So I'm mimicking that shadowed aspect out here in my painting. Maybe went a little too purple now. We'll see. Maybe it'll work in the long run. Working my way forward with this to try to make it to a little corner of that chair. So I still have that paint color in my brush, and I'm adding the windowsill here. Using my brush to kind of, like I said, it's all about the direction that you're using that brush. So I'm making that windowsill in here. There's this extra inside bit where I can use some of this blue gray that I have left over actually from painting my cat. And I don't have to be, I need it to be straight. I just don't need it to be 100% perfectly straight. It is a painting after all. I don't need a ruler. Just need that edge to be a little darker there. Got a little extreme. So those are little color things that you can certainly sort of adjust as you go. For the purposes of this explanation, I think it'll work. We'll see as I move forward. So now as I shift a little forward, I'm getting to my chair. The very top of that chair is quite yellow. And so I'm going to go ahead and use the yellow at that very top of the chair. It is the edge that sits directly under like the cat's tail there in the light of the snow that's coming in. Once I move away from there though, this is quite dark. So I have mixed my yellow and purple together to make this dark color. Oh, that's going to end up way too much close to the color of the windowsill, so I'm going to have to fix that. So don't be afraid to use these dark tones. It is what's going to have your painting work for you. Is to make sure that you're thinking about where is it shadowed. And then also I again am pulling down a little bit of that yellow just to sort of soften that edge. And I'm thinking about what direction is a chair. The chair is up and down. So I'm using brush strokes to kind of pull that paint down and around, bumping right up into that pillow that I'll paint later, because that's more forward than the chair. There's kind of this wraparound glow here as the sun moves around, so I'm grabbing a little more yellow. But you can see that I'm moving forward one sort of piece at a time, making sure to not work too far forward without some background being done. Mess. To repaint some snow over there. And again, I'm keeping with that color pair. I am trying to simplify my palette as much as possible, so that as I'm painting, I have this unified sort of feeling in the work, and nothing feels jarring or out of place. And that all just comes from color harmony. The less colors you use as you paint, you know, and I should probably paint the wall back here first. Sort of the less colors that you use as you paint, the more harmonious your painting will feel. And particularly, you're wanting to make sure that you're paying attention. Like I said, brush strokes matter so much. What direction are you painting in? It helps us kind of feel what direction everything should feel like. You know, so I just painted that seat cushion here. And I'm just working my painting one little section at a time. Don't want to go too far to the front here before I paint more back. But you can see that we start to have contrast because I've brought this yellow in that I haven't used anyplace else in the background. So this becomes, you know, kind of where you can see the contrast of everything else in the painting until we hit the chair is just using those same colors. And so maybe I do need to consider warming up this corner a little bit with some of the red, that kind of red-orange color from the background. Get some of this kind of glow that we have here. So again, I'm looking at how, oh my gosh, how jarring that yellow chair is right now. And I'm kind of trying to figure out how can I make that be more a part of the painting. So don't be afraid to kind of shift back and forth. This reddish color wasn't a color that I had planned on using very much, but I did bring it in. And now I'm finding that I'm going to need to use it a little more than I thought I was going to kind of up that color harmony. Also making sure that I'm really watching my shadows. Like this shadow isn't deep enough anymore, so I'm gonna have to grab a little purple and mix that in. Get this kind of depth of shadow back here in the corner of my chair. Having your room feel three-dimensional and having it feel like there's a sense of space is 100% about having the shadows there that you need. This chair doesn't feel three-dimensional right now because the shadow in there isn't dark enough. So, you know, evaluating while you're working to make sure that as you go, that you're getting kind of the value structure that you need in your work, so that it makes sense visually to us. I'm going to add a little bit more of this kind of buff warmness here as I move forward. I also know that I will get good contrast with this color if I'm going to go ahead and use that cobalt turquoise or more of the blue, because this just warmed this up a little bit. There's a pattern on the pillow that I don't necessarily need to worry about, but I am going to brighten this edge up where the sunshine is hitting. And you'll see that because I've painted the cat first and I'm now moving my way forward, we have that distinct sensation that the cat is in front of or behind the pillow. I'm painting the pillow edge over the edge of the chair. So it's part of why we paint things back to front is it does help us paint layers over the top. And so we get that ability to make things that are in the front feel in front because we do paint over the elements in the back. So it is definitely like a visual trick for us that we are working with from the back to the front as we work with our paints. So make sure you're thinking about that. Also, like I said, these rooms are all about getting the shadows to work. And also making sure that you haven't like mucked up your perspective a little bit when you did your transfer or even as you paint. So you do want to make sure that you're being cautious about keeping everything as in perspective as possible, or your room will start to feel a little funhouse mirror or funky. Things will feel a little off or wrong if you go too far out of the scope of like kind of normal, what we know to be normal perspective kind of conventions. So if your painting does start to feel a little off, you want to check your edges of things and your shadows for sure to make sure that everything starts to feel, things don't feel a little too wonky. And you're going to continue this until your painting is finished. We are aiming to have these done by the end of class on Friday, like I talked about today in class.